Hello everyone, and welcome to the Unlearning Talk series of the Start Create Cultural Change event. The Unlearning Talk series is a series of talk on resilience and sustainability in the sociocultural sector with a focus on Southeastern Europe. My name is Maria Luisa Laupodi. I'm speaking to you from Thessaloniki in Greece, and I will be your host and moderator for this online event. This event is part of the START program. The START program is a capacity building and fellowship program for aspiring cultural managers in Greece. The program supports creative minds who wish to kickstart their social initiatives and generate a positive impact in their local communities. This year, the START program has supported again 30 cultural managers from Greece by offering a professional placement in 30 different sociocultural centers in Germany. 15 of those cultural managers have moved forward with the program support and have implemented their innovative cultural initiatives in 9 cities around Greece until June 2020. I would like to take you through this journey with a short video we have prepared now. The START program is coming to a conclusion this year, and while thinking how we would like to conclude, we understood that a lot of the work that had been developed in the projects could be relevant to other areas in our region, and similarly, other projects could have a lot to share with our community. So we designed a series of talks to spread beyond Greece and Germany and in the Southeastern European space, as very often challenges remain the same when working towards sustainable cultural interventions. The Unlearning talks evolve around 3 thematic cycles. Cycle 1, coping with emerging crises, challenges and trends. Cycle 2, resilient models of social and cultural entrepreneurship. Cycle 3, building new collaborative methods of cooperation and networks. Each cycle spans over 3 days, from Tuesday to Thursday every week. Every day there is a different topic and a very rich and diverse lineup of speakers from Southeastern Europe. For more information, you can visit the startgreece.net website. You as an audience can ask them any question you wish by downloading the Slido app, either on Google Play or App Store. The event code on Slido is #88647. So let me take you through the program. Today's talk is entitled Putting People First, the New Stresses of Sociocultural Practice in a Post-Pandemic World. In almost every country of Southeastern Europe, cultural life has taken a hit in one way or the other in terms of both social and economic impact. And within countries, the pandemic has further revealed inequalities facing vulnerable groups, in particular women, refugees, and people with disabilities. The lineup of speakers in this talk will reveal their experiences adapting to the new conditions and offer valuable insights on how to surpass obstacles and always keep putting people first. Before we go into more details, I would like to welcome our international sign language translator, Apostolis Margaritidis. Creating an online event offers the possibility to more people to access from different locations the same content. And it is important for us that such events are also inclusive and welcoming to as many people as possible. I will now take you through today's program, We will start with the presentations of our 5 speakers and then continue to the Q&A. This part of the Q&A is participatory by design, as you, the audience, can join by sending to us your questions and comments. So let me welcome the speakers of this Unlearning talk. Myrto Papadogeorgou from Drastic Awareness Campaigns in Greece, Stela Anastasaki from Mind's Eye in Greece, Maria Bottoglu, artist from Greece as well, Iskra Geshoska from Kontrapunkt in North Macedonia, and Katerina Antoniou from the University of Central Lancashire in Cyprus. So let's start with the first speaker, and I will introduce you to Myrto Papadogeorgou, who is an independent audiovisual producer and filmmaker from Greece with 16 years of experience. Most of her work is focused on the topics of civic engagement, sustainability, and social innovation. And while exploring ways to generate social impact through new media formats, Myrto has joined the START program in 2019 to develop the Drastic Awareness Campaigns, a project she will tell us more about it in a minute. So Myrto, you can start your presentation.
Hello, can you hear me? Sorry,
yes.
Sorry about that. So hello, Maria Luisa. Thank you very much for this great introduction and for having me here today. So the project I developed during my START fellowship was basically a project proposing a different way of creating awareness campaigns. So the aim of Drastic Awareness Campaigns was to create a campaign that was unconventional, participatory, and also a campaign that intended to provoke emotions like empathy, rather than just give information. So the campaign called Steer Away basically aimed to raise awareness on the consequences of our driving behavior here in Greece, which, as most of us know, is really tremendous, really bad, while at the same time making visible initiatives and communities that provide good solutions to this problem. So initially we had prepared an array of things. We had targeted 3 different driving behaviors, and we were going to work with 3 different communities to address these 3 issues. But the coronavirus outbreak forced us to choose, basically. So what we did was we chose the abuse of pedestrian space from drivers, something that is very common here in Greece. You know, you see cars all the time parked in space that is for pedestrians, squares, ramps, pedestrian sidewalks. So the reason we focused on this was because we realized that even though driving was almost obsolete during the coronavirus outbreak, this particular issue had a lot to do with freedom of movement and the right of everyone to move freely and safely around the city, something which is not the case if we consider that only in Thessaloniki there have been 800 pedestrian casualties within 3 years because of a bad driving behavior. More importantly, the reason we chose this was because our main partner was Aliopsi. Aliopsi is an association teaching people with spinal cord injury how to become more independent and even how to navigate a wheelchair in the very inaccessible Greek cities. And the reason we stuck with this community is because not only are they a very resilient community, but they also are very experienced in what it means to be in lockdown. A lot of times in Greece, you think there are no people on wheelchairs, moving with wheelchairs, but that's not the case. It's just that our cities are so bad, so inaccessible, that we force people to stay at home. So this is something that we really could work with, because we really wanted to create a campaign that was relevant to what everybody was feeling at this time, while addressing the issue of bad driving behavior. So we were very lucky to have with us a trainer of Aliopsi, Iotis Chrysovergis, who really paved the way into making this a really inclusive project. And the whole concept was that we created and promoted a city tour on the history of the automobile in the city of Thessaloniki. It was advertised as such. It had nothing to do with accessibility or driving behavior. We just wanted to get people who were interested in having a city tour, you know, not people who were interested or already aware about the issues we were gonna demonstrate. So when the tour started, it was disrupted by the unexpected participations of 2 members of Aliopsi. People didn't know that they were going to join us. They were surprised. So altogether, we started walking, going around the city. And really what happened was gradually you could see that the participants were actually sharing a very different experience with the members of Aliopsi. They were not so much interested in the tour itself, which was extremely interesting. They were more into going side by side with the 2 members of the group that were facing constant obstacles. And that for us was amazing. And another thing we did was we had, in the tour, had set up a stage immersing performance aiming to not only provoke the reaction of participants, which it did, but also leave space to the members of Aliopsi to improvise and show us in a way what they go through every day in the city of Thessaloniki. It was a great experience for all of us. I do believe that this was a truly inclusive campaign that aimed to basically not make people with disability visible. It aimed to make them visible for who they are, not visible the way we see them, you know, and we really tried hard to show what everyday life is for them in a way that is neither corny or, you know, superficial. You can have a look and check out the entire campaign on our website. There you will also find a 20-minute 360 virtual tour because we felt that more people should participate in this project. And unfortunately, because of the restrictions of the coronavirus, we couldn't have a lot of participants in our city tour. The campaign went great. There was a lot of interest, a lot of emotion. We're really satisfied with the way it went. And here is our website where you can visit the entire campaign. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Myrto. I believe you're going to provoke quite a few questions to the audience, but I also already have some, but I will keep those for later for the Q&A. Thank you so much for your presentation. Now, allow me to present our next speaker, Stela Anastasaki. Stela Anastasaki is a cultural manager residing in Thessaloniki since 2000. Her professional experience derives mainly from her employment in the cultural sector and more specifically museums, cultural and education institutions in the city. Her aspiration is that the right to experiencing culture can become part of our daily life and be as easy and natural for all people. Stella, our audience is looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much, Maria Luisa, for the introduction. Hello, everybody. My name is Stella, and this year in the framework and with the support of the START Create Cultural Change program, I had the opportunity to run my first large-scale project, Mind's Eye, a project aiming to enable the inclusion of people with visual impairment in the experience of getting in contact with contemporary art. Mind's Eye was opening arts to the visually impaired, was developed in collaboration with the Momus Museum of Contemporary Art and the Center for the Education and Rehabilitation of the Blind, Thessaloniki's branch. initiated in January and concluded in June 2020. Navigating through our new reality in the times of Corona, I'm sure that you can imagine how challenging would have been developing and delivering tactile applications for the visually impaired in a period that do not touch became our new reality. I won't lie to you, when the pandemic struck, it hit us on our soft spot, as they say, and it took us quite a while to stand up back on our feet. Today, I'm here not to share words of wisdom, rather than some points, practical steps and practices that we employed in our effort to overcome the challenges and keep the project alive. So what we actually did. We recalled the motto that the community used since the 90s, nothing about us without us. So we turned back to them and in order to redefine the problem from a new perspective, identify anew the challenges the community was facing and the mechanisms that they adopted to deal with the situation. At first, things seemed to be quite gloomy. People were isolated at their homes, museums were closed, all professionals have stopped their operations. There was no expiration date on these states, and we were trying to develop tactile applications when touching was a risk. People would have thought that we were crazy. So what we did in order to overcome this stage, actually, we returned back to the beginning and we recalled the three big questions: why, what, and how. Why was an essential element to rediscover and made us realize that the goal was the benefit of the community, inclusion, integration, social cohesion, and not just the continuation of the project itself. What was obviously put on pause and how needed to be redefined. The next step was to reconnect and find new ways of communication with the community directly. When we did that, we discovered that fear and feelings of distress were very dominant. So it was necessary to reestablish the sense of trust and reassure them that we were still there, not for the sake of the project, but for them. Personal contact via the phone was a key to establishing this relationship, exchange concerns and find solutions. We asked and listened. We heard their opinions and formed together new approaches and protocols. I assume that we can all agree that uncertainty, lack of stability, and the sense of urgency, meaning fast decisions and fast reactions, were the three most obvious characteristics of the first period of the pandemic that all cultural managers experienced. We needed to adapt to the circumstances fast and efficiently. So what I found most helpful at the moment was turning to the community of managers, educators, and ad workers to find out firsthand how they were coping, what tools they employed, and what the atmosphere around them was. Musicians shared their experiences on how they ran digital concerts and rehearsals, teachers how they provided lessons online, cultural managers shared tools and protocols along with advices. The direction was clear: to go online and seize the opportunity the momentum provided and make the most out of the situation. But how does actually this apply to the needs of that specific community? Can we generate digital content that is inclusive and relevant to them? Does this address to their needs? During the first 3 months, the creative community was uneasy, and it was very much expected. Things were shifting towards other directions. For example, the word inclusion in that context was given another value, directed mostly towards the digital inclusion, not of the marginalized communities, but once again of the many. And let me pose this rhetorical question to you. How inclusive these social media campaigns, home activities, and virtual events that we have all participated in were for people with disabilities? The answer is that the majority was and still is not inclusive. But there are things that we can do about it. So allow me to share a few practical solutions we adopted and hope that you might find them equally helpful. Web for sure provides opportunities. So when using social media, create inclusive content, meaning to add alt text to images, and this works well both for Facebook and Instagram. Add captions and screen reader apps on websites. add audio description in theatrical plays and movies. When designing inclusive events such as this, which is already kind of inclusive, render them inclusive. Provide translation from one language to the other, add sign language interpretation, use applications and web platforms that are accessible, and Zoom, for example, is one of those. But what we found more helpful when we ran the virtual meetup was to engage a person from the community as a contact who could provide tech support and guide them through the app. Meeting in this virtual environment is an opportunity and a privilege, but let's not forget, we still need to meet in physical and re-enter cultural spaces, museums, theaters, concerts, schools and squares, and live outside in our social and cultural life. This period offers a great opportunity to rethink, reapproach, and redesign the social structures and spaces in a way that embrace and include us all. So the biggest lesson unlearned is that the problem is still out there. We still need to adopt and include everyone who is marginalized and let them get a seat at the table. Quoting Meredith Peruzzi, if the table starts to feel overcrowded, we are responsible for adjusting the seats and making more space until everyone who has been left out has the room they need, even if it's for a mobility device, a guide dog, interpreter, or any other accommodation. Thank you very much for your attention and looking forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Stella. The unlearned lessons probably are going to be relearned, and I'm sure our audience is going to want to know more about it. So the first two presentations shared mostly lessons learned from particular projects. Let us now invite our next speaker, Maria Bottoglu, to share information on people with disabilities and opportunities. Maria Bottoglu is a music artist from Thessaloniki in Greece. She has also participated as a composer in different music festivals for disabled people. Last year, she was involved in a project for the participation of people with special needs at cultural events in Thessaloniki and other EU countries. Currently, she's working on an idea which aims to create a travel agency as a social enterprise for disabled tourists. Maria, our virtual floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. During this period, I asked more about their needs. I researched what about actor and event they would like to participate after COVID period. First of all, they asked more about cultural event, theater, museum. They have many time to ask on internet their webpage. So if they find something interesting, they participate, they see, but we have some point of view. First of all, they have the problem that all of them, they can see or they can hear because they have not the correct system. Their need is have a correct system, have somebody to translate, and have the possibility to see music, theater, and museum. The most of them are have a high level education. They are new or old. They have a time to see spectacles. After that, you have a new we have to discuss more things because it's a very big market that have more time. They travel, exception the normal people. So it's a very good idea, this market for culture museum and organizer to have participants for this market, because they ask high level production, they have money, and after that they ask on internet information about the place, and they visit if they have the possibility. And this is a good, a very good case for the place to have a good presentation on the city, and on this people. The benefit are, as they say, are more that more than this. But first of all, we have to ask them and create special event for this, for those people, and give them the chance to participate and ask and about the history and what they can find in the place that they like to, in the place that take place the event. After that, finally, we have a better presence on the internet. They ask on social media. It's a good idea to have a good presence on social media and find information for next event organization, and through this way they can participate, ask information, and have more information about the organizer, and give them a chance to participate on our activity. For best results, you must have a better focus on disabled people, have a clear goal what they need, and after create activities and programs, have sustainable profile, and understand this market they need. Usually it's a very big market, till 2050. This market are 2 billion people, so it's a good idea for all of us to cooperate and ask them what they need and help us and inform about different subjects that they are interested. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Maria. Thank you for sharing with us the findings of your recent research during COVID. And also I have noted some very interesting advice you're giving to all of the people who want to create a website or content digitally accessible with sound quality and the images, for example. And I'm sure we're going to get back to this later, as also Stela Anastasaki has mentioned a few points on that. Let me now go to the next presentation by Katerina. Let me just check. Okay, let's go now to Katerina, Dr. Katerina Antoniou. She is a lecturer at the University of Central Lancashire in Cyprus, and she specializes in peace building and conflict resolution research. She has been involved in the delivery of social mediation training throughout Cyprus and in the development of a nationwide social mediators network. So, Katerina, welcome. You can start your presentation now.
Thank you very much, Maria Luisa, and thank you all for being here today virtually to listen to my presentation. What I wanted to talk about in relation to my experience with social mediation and peace building is what I have examined and observed in relation to Cyprus throughout the COVID-19 outbreak and the lockdown throughout these past few months. As you might be aware, Cyprus has been experiencing an ethnic conflict for decades, and for the past four decades or so, it has been geographically partitioned between its ethnically Turkish community, which is in the north of the island, and the ethnically Greek community that is at the south of the island. The Turkish Cypriot community is under the Turkish Cypriot administration, which is not internationally recognized as an independent state, and the south is under the internationally recognized Republic of Cyprus, with the two communities being divided by a buffer zone. Now, ever since 2003, it was possible for people on either side of the divide to move intercommunally, and therefore a lot of people have developed their lifestyle in a way that included frequent intercommunal movement. This could be for the case of having access to specialized healthcare or medication, for employment reasons or any form of employment or projects that involved the two communities, any form of peace building and conflict resolution initiative, but also a lot of cultural initiatives that included the collaboration of people from both sides of the divide in order to restore heritage monuments or to implement different cultural initiatives. Now, all this was put at risk or put at halt during the lockdown because the fact that the island is under two separate authorities that do not have diplomatic relations with one another and do not collaborate on a frequent basis, on an ongoing basis, meant that the two authorities had to deal with the crisis separately. So they would separately monitor and separately contain the virus, and this led to both authorities deciding to impose a lockdown that would prevent any intercommunal movement, any movement across the buffer zone. So this meant that all the members of the population that incorporated frequent intercommunal movement into their lifestyles were heavily affected, either for the quality of their lives or for any health emergencies, but also economically for terms of professional engagement. There was also a lot of people who have developed intercommunal relations who were unable to see family on the other side of the divide. So there was a holistic approach of the lockdown affecting people's lives. So seeing that, it was necessary for us to redefine the populations of Cyprus as not simply those who live in the north and those who live in the south, but it's important to acknowledge that there is an audience in Cyprus whose lifestyle includes communication and collaboration with both communities. So how does this can be better addressed from a policy perspective? Even though the Republic of Cyprus was applauded for the measures it had taken in regards to the containment of the virus, this was something that was not addressed until later on. And even today, intercommunal movement is still restricted to a great extent. Especially when it comes to non-emergency and non-health emergency reasons. So what can be done in the future is to use social mediation, which is a tool for facilitated communication between parties that are either not communicating or parties that are in rivalry. To be able to help them to empathize with one another and make dialogue processes more inclusive. Essentially, what has come up from the social mediation initiative over the past few months is the need to address the restrictions in intercommunal collaboration in Cyprus and to apply social mediation in a way that can create inclusive communication, and it can provide more holistic feedback to policymakers. This is something that is an initiative that is still developing, and it will be developed more in 2021 in order to establish the network of social mediators and address the element of having intercommunal collaboration in a more inclusive manner. Thank you for watching my presentation.
Thank you very much. It is quite interesting to see this change, and thank you for sharing with us the context, because it's always important to understand when things happen, why they happen so, and we will get back to that later in the Q&A. I would like now to move to the next presentation by our final speaker, Iskra Geshoska. She is the founder and president of Contrapunct in North Macedonia. Since 1994, she's active in the building of the independent cultural sector and the contemporary self-organized formats of action in the sociocultural context. In 2016, she established CRIC, Festival for Critical Culture, and from 2002 until 2010, she was director of the Independent Cultural Center Toska in Skopje. Additionally, she's a member of the General Assembly of the Helsinki Committee for Human Rights, and in 2017, she was engaged by the Ministry of Culture of the Republic of North Macedonia as expert in writing the National Strategy for Culture. Iskra, welcome. I believe our audience is really eager to hear you. Please.
Thank you, Maria-Louisa, for the introduction and for the moderation. It's very valuable to be part of this talk, and I'm grateful for the invitation. As you mentioned, Contrapunct, the organization which I represent, is established in 2001 as the organization which stands for development of critical culture in general, for connecting self-organized critical formats of acting in the sociocultural context, emphasizing the community based on the principles of solidarity. In the last 5 years, as the result of the whole our work, we established the platform and the festival CRIC for critical culture. And the main goal is to expose the artistic and cultural practices to the wider community, and through this process to lead towards socio-political change, if it's possible, as we believe is one of the great capacity of art and culture per se. This program is conceived as widening the public space for critical discussion and building the sociocultural capital, which is deeply connected to the most relevant political issues such as human rights, worker rights, rights to culture, identity issues, violence in public sphere, through political and economical apparatus and community building awareness through culture practices. The proposed program follows the line of sociocultural practices used as a political tool for influencing the society in its whole and aiming to change the notion of civil participation in raising the awareness of the value and power of arts and culture in the shaping of our societies and in the wider processes of democratization. The program tries to fill the absence of critical reflection on contemporary art and sociocultural movements, which should contribute to the dialogue as much as it reveals the way in which contemporary art deconstructs nationalistic myths, national identities and images standing for plural identities and different social stratus. In a sociocultural context where one faces a total devastation of the political culture, as actually our political context in North Macedonia is, and the lack of dialogue within the culture formations and the different cultural identities and practices, it's crucial to form a core that will critically question the possibilities and let's say the limits of these formats of communications tools and values that will create a basis for further discursive as well as operative activist sociocultural and political articulations of and within the public sphere. CRIC is a hybrid concept which shows different possible ways for building communities and active exchange of knowledge, promoting a dialogue, critical dialogue, new formats of distributing and of knowledge, and the constant questioning of the society through critical artistic practices, showing the strong connection with the political and politics. In our very historical moment, which we are living now, the fundamental questions of how we should organize our society, how we should live and work together, are felt with a new urgency, I believe, as we find ourselves implicated in the accelerating destruction of our ecosystem. The environmental crisis has reanimated questions regarding the ability of capitalism, even in mainstream political debates. We must realize and accept that we have been shattered in this quarantine narrative. However, the awareness of our fragility should branch and ennobled protest and resistance, which would reinforce even further the artists' responsibility to reconsider their place in the world and the world itself. The disease has forced us to live in isolation. Art is capable of taking the significance of isolation to a whole another political level. Namely, the artist was never stranger to isolation. In the world of creative production, it has been the bridge used by the artist to unite with the true facet of the world in even greater intensity, thus dealing to its very essence, acknowledging it and reacting to it. In isolation, I think, in fact, we shouldn't stop, and artists and art and culture never stopped moving through this mechanical time in which reflection is absent. Culture is an exceptionally complex phenomenon intertwined in the network of structural relationship, contextual differences, ideological and political conflicts, That is precisely why the artist, the author, the culture worker need to seek a specific theoretical and practical paradigm in order to provide adequate means to interpret their own position. Perhaps it's time for a new avant-garde, I would say, radical approaches to the transformations of art, the artist, the art world, and the works of art. Excessiveness, experimentality, utopian, out-of-market, intermediate context for art production. That's what actually we need. To be honest, I don't see another way in which the society would be transfigured. It is very clear that the political will for transfiguration is lacking, at least in our country. We are overwhelmed in fog. We live in the world of falsity. We live in a world of emptiness that simulates plenty. A great confusion exists in that emptiness, and we are similar to bees who have been deprived of their honey. All the values that help us keep our heads up high, and that reinforce the notion that we can be noble only if we are in a community have been served from us. We are self-absorbed, we couldn't care less about the others, and we are in conflict with everyone else. That is why I believe that through the means of creative transformation, by creating parallel, subversive synergy communities between artistic and societal contexts, we could at least offer a blueprint for new community formats which would counter the intimidating global political tendencies and which would be founded on solidarity and empathy, which is the most important thing. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Iskra. It has been a dense presentation with so much of your experience. And I have already some questions, and I can already see on the Slido app some questions for some of our speakers and yourself. So moving forward to the questions now, and thank you, of course, to all our speakers. Let me remind you that you can participate in the conversation by sharing your questions or comments through the Slido app and download it through the Google Play or the App Store. The event code is #88647. You can also participate, of course, through the Facebook live stream. And we will collect your questions and share them with our speakers. So where to start from? I mean, there's so many topics. Putting people first, this is our topic of the day. And I think I would like to start with a question we have received already through Slido, and which is to all speakers. I mean, we have been experiencing the transition from physical to digital. And the question says, what was your biggest fear while transitioning from physical to digital with your audiences? And of course, an audience can be a different thing from one to the other project or case. From the Cyprus case, audience is the people who are not anymore permitted, obviously, to transit to the other area. Or in the case of Stela Anastasaki's project, audience is also beneficiary, participant in the museum. So maybe I can start with Myrto in this case. So what was, the question says, your biggest fear?
Well, the campaign and all campaigns are designed to have a physical and a digital part. So for me, it was already in there, you know, it was in my idea. Basically, my transition had to do with virtual reality, with 360 video. And for me, that was very exciting. I would not be as excited if it were having workshops that had to become Zoom workshops all of a sudden. I would not share that excitement, but I'm very interested in new media. So for me, it was a reason to push forward and actually create a 360 video, which I had never done before.
Sorry,
Yeah.
excuse me. So I was actually saying that your fear in a way, or your anxiety, turned into pushing you into virtual tours, right?
Yeah, yeah. It was, I was scared, certainly, but also excited.
Okay, thank you. Katerina, you want to share with us?
Yes, thank you for the question. It was definitely an opportunity to have the virtual option available, specifically in times of restrictions in physical movement. Now, speaking from past experience in the conflict resolution area in Cyprus and with regards to peace building initiatives, it was important for peace builders in Cyprus to develop not only physical spaces for the two communities to come together, but also virtual spaces. I think this is something that is part of our lives more holistically now, and particularly becomes an opportunity when it comes to bringing two geographically separated communities together. Now, with regards to our current project on the Social Mediators network, we do have members of this network that are from both communities, and what we are in the process of developing is a mobile application that would allow a virtual space to be created particularly for this network, so that physical restrictions wouldn't be an obstacle to the collaboration of the two communities. So we are excited for that.
And is this something that has been requested in a way to you from the community you're working with?
We have had approximately 2 years of working on the initiative of social mediation in Cyprus. This is an initiative that has been taken by the iClaim Center for Interdisciplinary Methods in Dispute Resolution, which is in affiliation to UCLAN Cyprus. And what we have, the feedback we have received from a series of social mediation trainings that we have delivered, and also a social mediation conference, is that there is a need to apply social mediation or this form of facilitative communication in relation to the conflict in Cyprus, and the need of the active members of this initiative is to be able to apply, particularly now that restrictions are more evident and there seems to be further division of the two communities in times of crisis.
Okay, thank you. Stella, you mentioned to us how you felt, how you've been hit in your project, as you mentioned. So again, I will ask, this kind of fear of transitioning, has it actually transitioned at all? Or did you wait until you can get back to the physical?
We actually moved forward with both solutions. We stick to our initial plan and developed these applications, and this actually is now available for everyone who wants to visit the museum. We actually have achieved to create an inclusive museum. So for me, it was actually, the biggest fear was there. It was already lived because when you are trying to integrate an important part of the community in the larger social landscape, it seems that the battle is lost, but the war is still out there. And so I felt the urgency that, okay, now we put a pause on this situation, because the momentum before the COVID was there. We were actually creating inclusive spaces and material. And I felt that we were moving forward. And my fear was that this will take us 100 steps backwards, because now we cannot touch anything. So, but there are other solutions to this aim. So my biggest fear is that we are going to stick with the digital. Personally, I don't like it. I am not very used to it, and call me old-fashioned, but this is not my place of preference to be and socialize with other people. Mm-hmm. And I believe that this is the need that all people have to feel part of the community and feel welcomed in spaces, not only digital, but actually physical. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, at least honestly, this fear. Now, I will address the same question to Maria Bottoglu. So, when you did your research, or when you spoke to the people with disabilities from your research, did you encounter any difficulty, or what was your challenge in this process?
Yes. First of all, I recognize about the services all around the world, and in Greece especially, what they can find, and then they need. They ask for information. They ask for not only find a hotel and ticket. They ask about culture. Mm-hmm. Traditional. They would like to participate on a special day, and this is their need, and this ask no tradition vacation. So after that, I find all accessible place, the cultural place, the history, mm-hmm. and the problem. I combined all this, and second time I asked the problem. First of all, they can find accessible web page. This is a very big problem. This period, they have time to ask for information and look at cultural event that in other case they have the possibility to participate, or because they took place in another country, or because the place is not accessible. So it's a very good period to transform all our information accessible to those people and create event. Not exactly here I look. Call the participant or the actor and participate to the project. Okay, it's very good. Look a story, but it's better. One the example, traditional day, and we have many history. Present this history, and then explain and create an event about this history, and those people can participate and understand why it's important for the place, and the place after have many participants due to they are interested for culture, a traditional event. So it's a great
opportunity now.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to ask, of course, the same question, to be fair, of course, to everyone, because I'm sure that Iskra, when doing work with Kirk, there are, you mentioned a lot of different kinds of work that you do with community building, with the socialization, with the discussion, with enabling discussion, if I recall well from your presentation. So I understood that there is a fear that we are lost, we are more self-reserved and so on. But when we shift to the more digital side of the Kirk Festival, if this can happen at all, what is your biggest challenge?
Yes, it has been a big challenge, and it is still a challenge because everything what we are doing is about Agora, is about meeting people. It's not only about the event and delivering some kind of knowledge or counter knowledge. It's not about that. It's about deeper interaction and making, let's say, a network, but network which is based on a deeper ideological, political, sociocultural premises. So to be honest, it's like a confession now. To be honest, we were thinking, let's stop. We don't want to do this year. We will stop with our programs, with our activities, because it's a kind of protest towards pandemic world. I mean, it's more complex, but suddenly we realized that actually it might be a challenge to re-question our positions and to find to realize that there are some other levels of communication, some other levels of creating agora and interactions and this community of solidarity and empathy. This is extremely important to us. So from denial, we enter to actually to something very exciting. We starting to spreading the platform, and to be honest, now we have even more connections than before, because yes, the excuse that we can't move, but we can move in another space, we can travel through another virtual space, somehow made us more present to the wider public. So now we are starting actually a digital platform for Creek. I would like to mention that Creek in our language means scream, to scream. And it's an acronym: critique, react, idea. So yes, so we started to create a step-by-step digital platform for critical culture, which will actually, I hope, it will merge, it will widen the work which we are doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Iskra, for sharing this, and also for being honest, like Stella. I would like to take now, move on to something which is a big, let's say, bigger picture, and it is about this advocating aspect that you mentioned. So I would like to ask Stella about any initiatives or any steps towards advocating for the needs of the community you are working with for policy changes, because you've had a really deep experience, a real time with the museum and the community of visually impaired people. So what would be your next move for a policy advocacy work, let's say?
During that time, actually in May, we tried our first step just towards this direction, and this was through the virtual meetup that we have designed and implemented, where we invited speakers from different disciplines to share their notions on inclusion and accessibility in order to create, to open a dialogue and map actually a little bit what is happening around us and how can we change this. Our meetup was implemented in the framework of the ICOM Museum International Museum Day, with the subject Museums for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion. So it was a very good opportunity in that framework. And our title was Art and Inclusion, Practices and Suggestions for Adoption. So our first thought was to open up a dialogue and actually suggest a few things that could be adopted from a general aspect and point of view. We didn't succeed to deliver that, but we discovered that there was a common ground and a common desire from everybody to start developing these practices and to working on a common policy making, because right now there is no such direction. Let's hope that in the future we will come back together and we will be able to open again this discussion and we have the first results.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Stella. This sounds promising, and indeed connecting your meetup with an international event helps very much the visibility. And talking about visibility and advocacy, I would like to ask Myrto. I'm seeing some also questions general from our Slido up, so it relates to that. How can a campaign like the one you've showed us make the community you're working with more visible? So what is it that is, let's say, special, or what could be even more interesting in a post-COVID era with more digital message creation?
To make, I think, any community visible, I think you really need to work very closely with that community. And in our case, it was like the community we worked with, people with spinal cord injury, gave us very valuable knowledge about their life and their needs and how they want to be seen. And we gave our experience in filmmaking, in creating disruptive events. And to me, what I took from this experience was that the people I worked with were really happy, because at first they were very skeptical about what we were doing, because so many times they become victims of a very corny kind of campaigning, like most campaigns try and make you feel sorry for people that you shouldn't even feel sorry for, you know. So I think in order to increase visibility of any marginalized group, you have to really get to know them, you know, and focus on how they see themselves, because then you will understand how they want to be seen. And of course, I really believe in overturning all these cliches that we're used to a lot, you know, in social campaigning, and try and find innovative ways that are more honest. For example, I feel it's completely wrong to try and create an awareness campaign by creating advertisements. You know, you cannot advertise social responsibility. You cannot advertise inclusion. You cannot tell people, buy this, you know. So for me, my approach is always very close to documentary, as I'm principally a documentary filmmaker. So I think you have to be really honest with your audience in order to increase visibility of what you're doing, and especially when we're talking about a marginalized community.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Myrto. I think honesty is a topic that comes in and out of our discussion today. And I'm also going to ask an honest question to Katerina Antoniou now, because, from what you said, it's a conflict issue. So having on top of it COVID doesn't help very much resolve those conflicts. So do you see, or do you already have you already experienced any development in bringing closer the authorities through the work that you are doing and through connecting with those communities from the Greek side and the Turkish side in Cyprus?
This is the question is very on point, because this is definitely something that we are aiming to do through the work of the Social Mediators Network. So it hasn't been applied yet, but one of the priorities is to get in touch with the authorities and the policymakers themselves. And this is something that came as feedback from the majority of the trained social mediators that we had as participants to this initiative. So the answer to that would be, this is the next step, and yes, it's definitely a priority. Now, in terms of work that has been done in the past, there are other peace building initiatives that bring the two communities together, that have involved either local authorities on either side of the divide, or other isolated policymakers. Of course, when it comes to the leaders of the two communities, politics can be more complicated, and it really depends on the context of each period as to how eager the authorities would be to potentially collaborating, and what the diplomatic restrictions are there. But nonetheless, any grassroots initiatives and any academic or research-oriented initiatives, and definitely the Social Mediators Initiative, is something that would seeks to involve individuals and change makers on all levels of and through all sectors, including authorities. So.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. This is a message that gives some hope. I'm very interested to see how this kind of grassroots to research to policy work can transcend and transition, pretty much like we're talking today about keeping people in the focus, but making the shift from physical to digital and vice versa. I have more than one questions in the Slido app for Iskra. Now they're quite a bit similar. So it has to do with, again, having a voice and advocating for communities and for the work. So the question is, when there is not a unified voice within the cultural sector, how do we resolve this? And if you have any advice on how to find a common ground, I want to give you a short example of what we started doing in Thessaloniki through the COVID period, through the lockdown. A group of professionals, cultural professionals and cross-sector from the cultural field, we started creating the Alliance for Thessaloniki Culture. It's an informal initiative, but we felt an even bigger need to advocate also from the local aspect, not generally about the cultural work. So this for us is one way to start growing and maturing as networks. So please give us your input on that. I mean, you have a lot of experience, obviously.
Yes, it's not easy here. Unfortunately, I have to admit that we are not a culture of making communities and connections and networking. We are trying very hard, but when you have from above the scenery, the policies which are sending you message that everything is about the monopolization, not only of the political and economic resources, but also of the cultural ones, then the main problem becomes that everybody thinks that particular interest is the main and the most important interest, not the common interest. So in this situation, this is we face finally this as the biggest problem, not having a sense for commons, for the common good, for the public good. So there are isolate attempts to change and to show in this pandemic situation, to show how important is this how important is to change this perspective, which is, again, I have to say, which is the message which is coming from above to the whole society. We even don't have that in our basic education, that we should be together in something, that we should fight together, that we should create the spaces of togetherness within which we will show our differences. This monopolistic and concept of our mainstream politics affects somehow all of us, affects the independent culture sector, but also affects the institutional sector. So now there are several initiatives which are trying to break this ghettoization and, I would say, elitization of our sociocultural context. Because unfortunately, in our case, in North Macedonia, art and culture increasingly somehow become a mere tool for manipulation in these dirty political games, and even dirtier teams competing in politics. And this is exactly what keeps us in constant tension and struggle. We don't, I have to admit that we do not have in this very moment a specific strategy how to continue with our struggle in this new situation, but we are gathering and we are discussing this, and I hope that something more stronger, something stronger will come on the surface after all this, what is happening to all of us. Mm-hmm. And I will inform you about that.
Yes, please. Thank you for being honest again. It's true. We've been seeing similarities in some regions and areas, and I am sure that this kind of exchange, because it's been mentioned in various answers from all of you. I have a last question as a common question for everyone before we conclude. And that is, that has to do, you mentioned just now, Iskra, about the struggle, and it is about the stresses. I mean, we've all experienced, whether we were content producers or content consumers or somewhere in between, the stress of change, which is inherent. It is part of how we are as humans. So what do you think will be the next stress, not in terms of what do you expect as the next pandemic, of course, but what is the next challenge for your work? So, for example, Mirto, my question would be mostly, what would be your next campaign? And if there's going to be also another challenge. So what is the next challenge as you can foresee it coming? I will start with you, Mirto.
There are many challenges, obviously, and the coronavirus outbreak has brought so many issues in public life, including fake news and the manipulation of information to achieve different goals. And for me, Greece is a place that is really new to this. You know, the audiences are really new to this. So for me, if I were to decide tomorrow what kind of a campaign I would do, it would be a campaign that would educate people on how to be more critical in what they believe and what they take in, because it's a very serious problem. and only now the Greek audience is becoming aware of this. And this is a huge challenge. This is a huge political challenge as well. So this is a challenge of democracy, because we're talking about blatant propaganda right now. So I will keep it short. So yeah, that would be it.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think, very, very near to some of the points that Iskra raised. So I would like to ask Katerina, how do you see your next challenge coming up in terms of, you know, keeping the focus on people and putting them first, as we say?
Well, we're at a stage where we have identified certain needs and certain challenges in society. We have identified ways of addressing them. So now the next challenge is how effectively can we implement these approaches. As I said, we are at the development of a new stage of our social mediation project. We're putting together a network of social mediators and setting down the action plan for how do we make social mediation relevant and impactful and able to bring in social change, and how do we do that effectively? These are the questions that we will be asked to answer in practice and probably in theory as well, throughout the next months. So I'm looking forward to this challenge, and we're ready to address it both physically and virtually if needed.
Okay, that sounds like a good plan for a challenge. Thank you so much. Stella, your next challenge?
Today I'm optimistic, and I will say I don't see a challenge, rather an opportunity. And what we have learned this period of the pandemic is that we are able to adapt and react fast. Usually the changes and in social level take a lot of time, but this period we have experienced a rapid change in every level. So this gives me hope that when we want, we can do that. And if we decide that we want to focus on the environment and take care of it, because this is the next challenge for me, this is the deal. We can shift perspective and adopt this, as long as we want to do that. So yeah, this is what I'm seeing now.
Okay, thank you. You're totally giving a new perspective now. But yes, so yes, I would like to ask Maria Bottoglu, what do you think will be in your work, your next challenge?
My next challenge is have good online presentation and create at the same time a physical cultural event and give the chance to other people participate at the same time online, and give the possibility to people looking at your organization through the internet.
Okay, that is already quite...
This is organization, event, museum, good online presentation, and social media marketing is the best this period.
Okay, thank you very much. And last but not least, Iskra, I'm going back to you. So going beyond, you know, all these challenges that have to do with the society, the culture, and so on. So what do you think really for Kirk Festival would be the next thing?
I think that this, as we heard before, this might be an opportunity for a deeper, even deeper establishing the relations with partners, with people, with collaborators, and even with ourselves, to slow down and to realize finally that the world imperative, which was running more than 1 decade, and that was the mobility, is not the only thing and only path for establishing emancipatory processes, but let's make the mobility within ourselves, within our small communities, make them more strong, make them stronger. Mobility of thought, mobility of some different way of production. So actually we were thinking, maybe it will sound a little bit anachronic, but we were thinking to emphasize now again the writing, the culture of writing, because the whole world became a talkative culture somehow, a talkative, I don't know, nucleus. But now we are trying to encourage again writing, because writing is what can leave the real trace. So we are starting the new edition, publishing edition within the Creek Festival and platform. So let's see what will happen.
Good luck with that, of course. It is a challenge, true. So I would like to thank you all once more for joining us as speakers today. It has been a real pleasure having you on our virtual stage. And I hope that this conversation will be the first among many others that we might have as professionals among us. So thanks again. And also thank you to the production team behind this online event. It has been prepared with a lot of resilience and adaptability. And dear viewers, thank you for being with us on today's event. See you all in the next session next week on Tuesday, September 22nd at 18 hours European Eastern Time with a fourth talk. A new cycle is beginning. The fourth talk is on Achieving Social Impact Part 1, working on more equitable cities. So if what you heard today sounds interesting, I invite you to share your story by registering at our events page in the startgreece.net website. And until then, I hope and wish you to stay safe and join us on social media. Thank you very much.